trying to find the right display here. Might just have to do it this way. Do I need to be sworn in at all?
I'm sorry?
Do I need to be sworn in?
Yeah, please identify yourself and we'll have Ms. Fitzpatrick swear you in.
Sure. Kristen Russell with Colliers Engineering and Design.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Hi. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm here this evening to present to you an area in need study. This is for Burnett Avenue, which you may be familiar with as a mobile home site along Burnett Avenue here in Union. The context here is that it is block 5711, lot 1. The total site encompasses about 1.9 acres. And as I said, it's along Burnett Avenue. It backs up to Interstate 78. And it's adjacent to other residential uses to the west. It's currently zoned NC. This is your neighborhood core. It allows for 1 and 2 family residences, as well as offices, medical offices, and things such as that, parks and playgrounds. It has a minimum lot area of 15,000 square feet, so much less than the existing multi-acre site, and a maximum building height of 35 feet. One thing that we need to look at when we're considering an area in need study is the consistency with the master plan. Your master plan is fairly recent from 2021, so I did pull out some elements of your master plan that are consistent with this study. The first is the goal of maintaining the character of the existing residential neighborhoods while providing opportunities for housing types that meet the interests and needs of all ages and abilities. This includes recognizing the viability of and need for alternatives to detached single-family homes, two-family dwellings, and other housing configurations in existing neighborhoods should be continued where this will not undermine other objectives. And the requirement that infill in existing neighborhoods be compatible. Another goal is to establish realistic market-driven and financially feasible redevelopment plans that attract new development. And this is including encouraging the improvement of properties that are in disrepair. The local redevelopment housing law is what guides redevelopment and area in need studies throughout the state. And there's a series of criterion that need to be looked at and addressed in order to actually qualify. Without going through all of them, I will point out that the ones that I've highlighted in bold on the screen are the ones that I found to qualify. These include A, which is the generality of buildings are substandard, unsafe, unsanitary, dilapidated, or obsolescent, or possess any such characteristics, or are so lacking in light, air, and space to be conducive to unwholesome living or working conditions. Criterion D is areas with buildings or improvements, and I'm going to summarize here, which by reason of dilapidation, faulty arrangement, so on and so forth, are detrimental to the safety, health, morals, or welfare of the community. And then criterion H is one that is applicable under most circumstances here in Union, which is the designation of the delineated area is consistent with smart growth planning principles adopted pursuant to law or regulation. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this site encompasses only 1 block and lot. It's 1.9 acres. When it was originally developed, and in fact until today, there were 57 pads on that site for homes. But today there are only 7 occupied homes on the site. So clearly very underutilized. Not at all the way it was at its peak, and I have some pictures to show you of its more intense, more highly used era. There is a permanent structure at the southwest of the site. It appears to be a management office. It was not, there was nobody there when I visited the site, and I was unable to get an answer if anybody is ever there. but it is in relatively poor condition. And throughout the site, I was able to observe debris, refuse, remnants of old homes scattered about that hadn't been completely cleaned up, old stairs that led to front doors on trailers that are long gone. And here's a little bit of the history of the site. The yellow circle represents the approximate area of the site back in 1923. That's the first picture I was able to find. In 1954, we can see that it already exists. 1979, the highway has come in. And let me back up. 1979, you can see that site is pretty completely occupied by homes. And then 2012, the tree cover is a little bit tricky to look through, but you can see that there are fewer homes there than there were in the prior pictures, so it's starting to thin out. And then here, it's even harder to look through the tree cover, but there's even fewer homes remaining. You can see, like, towards the front by Burnett Avenue, there are a bunch of vacant pads, and same within the back corner. I spoke to several departments here in Union to understand the history of the site, particularly over the past 5 years. What's the recent, what's the history of recent violations, complaints, activity on the site? From the code violations, there were only 4, basically including vegetative debris, sub-reports of accumulating garbage, and faulty sewer connections. The health department, there were 18 complaints. And unfortunately, those were mostly related to solid waste and raw sewage and some animals. There are a lot of cats who call this place home. In terms of police activity, the numbers are not particularly high until you consider the fact that there are only 7 units on the site. So when we're having anywhere here between 4 and 11 calls per year, I don't think any typical block in a community necessarily sees that much unless there's a problem going on. Here's just some site photographs. So I'm going to address the criteria more specifically. As I mentioned earlier, criterion A is the first one that I found applicable to this site. This is the criterion which addresses the generality of buildings being substandard, unsafe, unsanitary, dilapidated or obsolescent, or possess such characteristics, or are so lacking in light, air, or space to be conducive to unwholesome living or working conditions. The homes in this site are not in great repair. It is my understanding that the interiors of some are even worse than the exterior, though I was not granted access. There's a lot of debris in the yards. There is just unkept yards, rusty, I don't know what it was, rusty metal here and there that was probably left over from prior residents. Tripping hazards, lawn debris, vehicles that appear to be inoperable, all of this creating unsafe conditions. Ongoing health code complaints and inspections related to trash, sewage, and animals further exacerbate the unsanitary and unhealthy conditions of the site. Criterion D is similar to criterion A. It talks to the reason of dilapidation, obsolescence, overcrowding, but it goes on to require demonstration that these factors are detrimental to the safety, health, morals, and welfare of the community. So I call out that the significant vacancy of the site of approximately 88% vacancy rate demonstrates a level of obsolescence. If the use was in demand or relevant, we would not see occupancy at such a low level. This low vacancy rate removes what we call eyes on the street. So when there's nobody looking, it gives you almost like a hiding place, a space where unsavory behavior, potentially criminal behavior, or just mischief can take place. So because of the vacancy rates, there's little disincentive for the community to be, on its best behavior or obeying the laws of the township in this community. And then criterion H, this is the designation of the delineated area is consistent with smart growth planning principles adopted pursuant to law and regulation. So all of Union Township is in planning area 1. This is the metropolitan planning area. And the goal of that planning area is to contribute to the revitalization of cities and towns, to support compact growth and stabilize older suburbs. So in Union, you have the benefit that your entire community is in this planning area 1, and any revitalization, redevelopment, infill, reuse always qualifies as criterion H in Union. So, so we do include that criterion. Those are all the criterion I went through. As I mentioned, the proposal or the study is consistent with your existing master plan. In my professional opinion, the site does qualify based on these 3 criterion. I will make a little bit of an embarrassing confession that earlier this week I noticed that I had flip-flopped 2 town names. I'm working in 2 towns and double multitasking, and I apologize. On page 6 there was a town error name that I will have corrected. As I said, multitasking was not in my favor when I wrote this report, so I will have that corrected. But with that said, I'd be happy to take any questions about the site or the reasons for my conclusions or anything else related to this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Questions from the board?
I don't know if you're the person to address this, but do you know if they've been summoned to clean up or repair any dilapidated buildings?
Yeah, when I was looking through the violations, there was a history of when the violation was made and when it was resolved. So I did not see any outstanding current violations, but past violations had been resolved to an acceptable extent. I think that one of the issues on the site is that when there's only 7 properties occupied, there's also not a lot of people, for better or worse, there's not a lot of people observing it to complain. So to the best of my knowledge, there are no current open complaints, and the past complaints have all been resolved. With that being said, when I visited the site, I did not think it was in particularly good condition, but that doesn't mean that it's a health hazard or a violation.
And does that also pertain to the animal issue? Have they been contacted to come and maybe
The
rescue?
cats are feral, as I understand it, so I don't know how you handle that unless, nobody says, oh, those are my pets. So how do you even address that?
Meaning like the ASPCA, they won't come and rescue them?
I
and
mean,
take
I
them
don't know
to
if
a
anybody
shelter?
has ever called the ASPCA. I'm not sure.
Ms. Russell, the building that is on, I think, the left as you enter,
Yes.
that appeared to be some sort of a welcome house or
Yes.
a caregiver's house,
Yes.
caretaker's house, I should say. Is that occupied now by anyone?
It
who-
did not appear to be, and I wasn't able to get a definite answer on that, but it does not, in my site visit, it appeared vacant, and I couldn't find any evidence that anything was happening in there other than maybe like storage.
Yeah, so that building, in other words, there's no one there who is sort of administrator for that unit, those units?
I do not believe so, nope.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the public? All right, well, thank you, Ms. Russell.
You're
I'll take
welcome.
a motion that the Burnett Avenue area needed redevelopment plan be approved.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Second,
Second?
roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Russell. I understand we have you for the amendments to the land use ordinance?
Yes, you have me again, and this presentation should be fairly straightforward. As you know, you recently adopted amendments to your zoning code. So what we have before us tonight is both kind of editorial corrections to that, as well as a few issues that were brought to our attention just over the course of working and speaking to the zoning officer and so forth. The first change is some updates to the definition. I have clarified the definition of a non-conforming lot. The second definition, and I'll give you a little bit of a backstory here, we've defined a short-term rental. This is what you all probably just call Airbnb. This is currently not regulated in the code. It is anticipated that regulatory language will be added to the existing rental code, so that's not the same as the zoning code, will be added to the rental code in the near future. We were hoping to have them done simultaneously, but that didn't quite line up. So still, there's no harm in adopting the definition now so that it is all in place for when that regulatory language is ready to be adopted. Throughout the code, there were a few numbering errors. You know, when you're reading a section of code and it says, as per section something else. It was very hard to catch all of those in the first round, and the E-code company was able to spot a few more. So those are just corrected numbering throughout the code. We've also added the recently adopted Clinton Manor redevelopment area, which I believe you're all familiar with. And somehow the sign type of a pole sign had gone missing during the prior adoption, so we just put that back in. I clarified some truck parking regulations that had been an issue for the zoning officer. And I have a floor amendment. In the package that you received, along with the definition for short-term rentals, we had anticipated what zones that would be added into. We do not want to permit that until that regulatory language is prepared and adopted. When we thought that this was going to happen simultaneously, it made sense to list that in your table of permitted uses. It does not make sense to include that in your table of permitted uses before the regulatory language is already ready. So as a floor amendment, I want to take out those references in your use table, and they will come back to you at a more appropriate time. But that's all I have for the zoning code amendments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Russell. Questions from the board? Questions from the audience? Questions from the public? Okay. Take a motion that amendments to land use ordinance be approved.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve the amendments to the land use ordinance.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Abstain.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Russell.
Thank you. Good evening.
And our next new business is Silva Associates. Will the representative from Silva Associates please approach the board, please?
Mr. Chairman, I was asked to give Ms. Rutledge proof that they comply with the notice requirements. I have 19 pages for her. I took notes on the last 2 pages, so I'd like to supplement those later.
Sure, can you please,
Is this the same?
you please present your name on the record, please?
Your Honor, John George, I'm sorry, Mr.
So
Chairman,
this
John
is
George.
five.
G-I-O-R.
No, the second one.
I think everyone, is there someone that can't hear me?
It's going out over the
Oh, if
public.
it's the same email.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it's all.
John Georgie. Yes, once again, John Georgie, G-I-O-R-G-I, local attorney in Union. I do apologize, Ms. Serrano got severely ill, called me about 2:30, actually emailed because she lost her voice about 2:30 and asked if I could step in for her. Well, I am a real estate attorney. I did a deep dive into this file this afternoon, so unfortunately, the experts and the client know probably more than I know about this, but I'm going to try to get us through it.
I know exactly how filling in for someone feels.
Right.
It's,
So I actually had a chance to visit the site today, 2481 Vauxhall in Union, New Jersey, and I noticed that it looked pretty much the same as I had last visited when I had my high school reunion, which is probably 10 years earlier at the Casa del Sol. So I'm glad to see that someone is willing to step up and do something on the site. And we plan on presenting testimony from Mr. Silva, who will tell you about his background in real estate and his desire to develop the site, which is an eyesore similar to the pictures we just saw. We're going to hear from his engineer, Mr. Baig, who I'm very curious because part of the elements of this site is impervious coverage, and he's going to explain exactly how the green roof works, which I was actually at McCallan Estates in Scotland, and I saw a green roof for the first time in my life, and I'm interested to see that. And then we'll hear from the engineer, Mr. Rui, I'm sorry, the architect, Mr. Rui, who will explain the project and why the project is a viable project for the site. But I will report to the board that there are some existing variances in place. One of them is the minimum lot width. Minimum lot width per your code is 150 feet. What's existing there is actually 100 feet, 6 inches. There's an existing variance on the front yard setback. It should be 10 feet. The existing building is 2.5 feet, okay, 2.5 feet. And there's an existing side yard setback. It should be 10 feet, so it's 3 feet, but those pre-exist this application. When we advertised this in the paper, there were proposed variances, and it had a lot to do with the sign. So what my client did was he took the feedback from the engineer and in a sense capitulated. So with respect to the sign, it had an approximate width of 8 feet, which a variance was required. He brought it down to 4 feet, okay? With respect to the sign, it could be no more than 1 foot above grade. His proposed plan was 1.5 feet. He's now changed it to be 11 inches, so it's below 1 foot. So we won't be asking for that tonight. And by way of background, with the sign as close to the street, his proposed length from the street was 10 feet. He's moved it back to comply with the ordinance, which is 15 feet, and that's all on the new set of plans. So what we're really coming here for is some design waivers, which are articulated number 7, 8, 9, 10. However, the client also agrees with the engineer. Lumens deals with the light. There was too many lights on the property. Even though he could have installed the lights he had and put films on them, he has reduced the lumens to comply with what the engineer suggested, which is 0.5-foot candles. I don't know how to equate that in terms of brightness, but he's going to comply in that regard. So the first witness I would like to qualify as an expert is the architect, who's already taken the dice over there. If you want to swear him in, I'll qualify him as an expert.
Sir, would you please identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, good evening. My name is Rui Amaral. I'm a registered architect in the state of New Jersey.
Can you spell your name, please? Whoa, please.
Sure. R-U-I, first name, and last name A-M-A-R-A-L.
M-A-R-A?
L.
Okay, thank you. Now, would you raise your right hand, please?
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Sir, how long have you been a licensed architect?
Since 1995.
Could you tell the board the educational requirements to become a licensed architect?
I graduated from NJIT in 1989, and I started practicing architecture as soon as I got my license, 1995.
Has there ever been a period where you didn't operate or in a profession of architect?
Now,
Okay. How many projects have you been involved in where you provided your architectural services over your career?
boy, tough number.
Approximately.
Would probably average maybe about 30 to 40 a year. So it's
Have
been
you ever been qualified as an expert testimony before any board or court?
just about all towns around here, including Union. I've been in front of this board.
Okay. Members of the board, I would offer the architect as an expert in the area of architectural, if you would accept him as an expert.
Thank you, Mr. George. So ordered.
Okay. Have you visited the site in question, 2481 Vauxhall Road?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And did you prepare the architectural plans that the board has seen?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you care to walk through the board as to why you believe this is the highest and best use for this site?
Okay. This property is on Vauxhall Road near Burnett. It's basically like 3 properties down from Burnett. It's on the right side. Across the street, there's a small cul-de-sac area. Next to our lot is sort of an empty lot. That's basically like a drainage lot. To our left is a fire department, and then 2 properties over is Costa del Sol. But in between there's a stream, or it's called,
I know we had to change the name from the.
yeah,
from the Roller Groups.
something branch. I'll tell you the name. This thing is stuck here for a second. Tough to get out. Yeah, it's Vauxhall Branch, it's called. And basically, this drainage basically comes around on the property, like I said, 2 properties over, and then it goes under the road, and then it comes out on the other side of the property.
Okay.
So that's the first, so to establish, you know, what's going on with this property. The property was previously used as a sort of like electronic, somewhat radios or something, repair shop. So the back building was basically the shop where they fixed stuff, and then in the front was the office.
And according to your plans, you plan on using pre-existing structures and then building off of those structures, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And we are basically proposing to do all offices, front and back buildings.
Now, in an NC zone, you could have put retail. Why did you feel retail wasn't good for the site?
Well, my client purchased the property, and he had originally we had other ideas as to how to develop the property, but he has a tenant for the offices.
Okay, do you know who the tenant will be?
I believe is a
If I told you it was the International Longshoremen's Association.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. The actual name, yeah.
Would you consider the International Longshoremen's Association a good tenant?
Oh, I would think so. It would be a benefit for the town, I'm sure.
Do you care to walk through the town
Sure.
with the interior design and the design of the building?
So I'll start with the property quickly. I'll put it up. So what we are proposing basically is like we mentioned, the 2 existing buildings are going to be renovated. The front building we are proposing to basically take out the entire frame, keeping the foundations. The reason being is that was a house, and the frame is not in good conditions. Once we start renovating, the whole thing is too much work to repair. So we'll reframe the entire building. It will give us opportunity to do a nice building also. And that building was going to be 2 stories of office. We will provide handicap accessibility and just bring everything up to code, so it'll be a brand new building, basically. The back building was a little bit more tricky, but that's basically we will be using the building as on the ground floor as offices. And then in the back section, the building is an L-shaped building, and the back section will basically be a 2-story building. On the front of that first section, in the front, so L-shaped, the front section is above it, it will be a green roof. And the reason for that is basically to hold some of the rainwater. It will hold the water when it rains, and then in case of like heavy rains, and then over time it releases back to the tanks on the ground floor or on the parking area. As to on the development of the property, basically currently right now you just drive in the middle of the property, and it's all kind of like the paving was all damaged. It was all, it's basically, so we are proposing to do basically like a parking island in the middle between, or say to the left side of the building. So it basically has an entrance. You come in on the right side. We will have 18 parking spaces as an island. So you basically go in, you can wrap around, and then come out on the other side. And all the dimensions meet the requirements, other than which is a waiver, is the parking space length, 18 feet. That was kind of required so that we would have the aisles with the proper size.
And let's touch upon that for a second. Do you believe, in your opinion, as an expert in architectural, that the difference between a 20-foot parking space and an 18-foot parking space has a negative impact on the zoning and planning laws in the Township of Union?
No, not really. That's just a design standard. Some towns adopt 18 feet, some 20. In this case, is 18. What we are proposing, and the town requires 20. And then, as we drive towards the rear, we are providing additional 7 parking spaces behind the building, and 1 loading spot space for it.
So if I have it correctly, one of the proposed design waivers, number 8, requires a setback for the parking. That has now been removed because there's no parking directly to the building, correct?
Well, we are providing 2 parking spaces between buildings. This one is not too clear.
But
on
it
the- on
says
the-
here, the ordinance requires a parking setback of 5 feet, and the applicant is proposing 0 feet. There's no more direct parking straight at the building.
Oh, yes, up against the building. Originally, we had parking up on this side here, up against the building. The parking requirements basically on this property is 20. We are providing 27. So we're a little bit over. This is in case for future use or expansion. And then the other variance that we require is in between buildings. There's 2 parking spaces, and those are handicap. One is handicapped, the other one is just in case there's a second, and that space is 5 feet from the property line. So that's the other variance that we need.
And one of the design waivers we had originally asked for is the fact that there be off-street loading area. And now you accommodate for off-street loading area, correct?
Yeah, there is one loading area behind the buildings.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add to the board regarding the building, the structure, and what would be in?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go on to the next phase. So basically, we asked for variances. The variances that we have they're basically existing. The lot width is 150 feet is required. The existing is 100.15. So that's an existing condition. And then front building setbacks, we require 10 feet from the property line. The existing is 2.3. So again, that's an existing condition. And side yards, on the side of the left side, the back building is 3.1. So those are the variances. Other than that, and the waivers, as I mentioned, we meet everything else.
So in your opinion, as an architect, do you believe that allowing these pre-existing variances in any way negatively impact the site, or negatively impact the area, or negatively impact the zoning laws and planning laws of the Township of Union?
No, it doesn't. I mean, these are minor variances, basically, other than existing. So these should they're not a detriment. As for the buildings, so on the front building, currently they had a basement. We will be eliminating that since we're in the floodplain area. So that's going to be a filled-in basement. But we are keeping the foundations. And then on the first floor, we have just office, and the staircase is the second floor, handicap bathroom. And on the second floor is an additional office square footage. We have a total of 2,000 square feet, 2,104 square feet on the front building.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Could you please explain again, the building closest to Vauxhall Road, which has a basement?
That's the building I'm talking about, the front building.
Plan is for that basement to be rebuilt.
It's going to be a crawl space. We're going to be filling in the basement.
Is filling in the basement,
Yes,
turning it into a crawl space.
yes. Otherwise, when floods go in, the water can get out.
The question was, how big is the crawl space?
How deep will
Oh.
the crawl space be?
The basement currently is about 3 feet below grade, so we'll be filling that in with dirt, and then we basically put a plastic cover, a vapor barrier, and then 2 inches of concrete, and that will be at grade level. So when it floods, or if there's any other flood, We have vents along the side of the building that basically, if it happens, or water happens to go in, it will come out, when it dries up, it comes out through the flood
And
vents.
so the water will happen to go in, I would think.
Right,
When you're finished, I do have a question.
sure,
Proceed.
One follow-up question.
sure.
You realize that this property lies in a flood hazard area. In fact, a portion of that flood hazard area is impacted by the floodway. So the obvious question is, are these buildings, these two buildings, in your opinion as an architect, going to be able to sustain moving water, which could at points be at least 2 feet high above grade?
I have, if by filling it in, it will prevent any movement of the building itself. I've been involved with Sandy. Yeah, I was involved. Well, again, I was involved in some of these cases where foundations got torn up. Basically, the ones that got torn up was basically when there's an uneven area. In other words, if there's dirt on one side, foundation, and then basement, then those walls would cave in. We are only 2 feet above grade on foundations. In other words, the existing foundations will be above grade, just about 2 feet. It's a small area that will be, the entire area will be underwater, but it won't blow it away or anything. It should be fine. Plus, once we establish the new frame, everything will be reinforced so that the building itself it'll prevent from shear, basically moving the building around.
Another question. I pointed this out to the applicant early on, that my opinion that there would be a requirement for a flood hazard area permit from the DEP. Has there been any discussions whatsoever with the department?
I can answer that question because my client wanted to defer that expense until he found out what the board's opinion was a problem. So he didn't want to incur that expense if the board was not inclined to allow him to develop the site.
So he understands that this would be a condition of an approval.
1,000% we discussed that. You and I discussed it this afternoon, I discussed it with him, he already knew that.
Yeah, the engineer that we have that prepared all the drainage for this property, he's going to be the one that will be doing the DEP application. We have spoken, it's all on the contract to do it. So as I mentioned, the front building will have like a nice glass front on both floors. On the side, it will have handicap ramps that will be required. And it will be an attractive building. The back building, currently the ground floor is on grade. It's basically like on the dirt. There's a concrete pad. Basically, the building was a garage, basically. And we are going to be lifting it off the ground 2 feet. We will be doing a whole new frame on this building. We were still keeping the outside walls, but then we're going to be raising the walls. That back building, some of the walls, like the brick, is kind of loose, and there's garage doors on the side. This was all garage doors. That's all going to be removed. So that back building is going to require a little bit more masonry work to reframe and to rebuild. But the foundations, we're still going to be using the foundations. And again, this building is going to be all new frame, and it will be all offices. It's going to have 4 offices, storage rooms, staffs, couple of bathrooms, and a reception area. And then the second floor will have a conference room, and then a small deck off the front of the building, and then the entire area is going to be a roof, green roof, as I mentioned before. And again, it will be glass all the way around the building. Sure.
There is some concern about the structural aspect of this building and being able to support a green roof. We will need a letter
Correct. Basically, this roof can hold about 6 inches of water, and it's just on the front section of the building. And yes, those foundations are going to be, once we start demolishing, and we're going to be exposing the foundations, and then at that time, we'll have the engineer certify it or whatever we need to do, and then we'll file for permits and get inspections and all.
I believe our next expert, it was quite an education on that. We came up with a flow chart for everyone to see how exactly it works.
So that's basically my presentation.
Okay, any more questions from the board? Questions?
First question that I had, the first diagram that you showed, you mentioned either on-road or what did you say, off-road loading?
Off-road loading site, yeah.
Off-roading loading site. Can you point out to where exactly that would be?
And exactly what is being
Loaded,
yes,
yes.
in both areas.
So the area appears here. I'm not testifying, but I'm just pointing where it is.
He spoke of off-street loading.
Yeah, if you want
wanna
to
know
see it up
where
on the
it is
wall,
And why you would need to be loading, what would be loaded in office space that would require that?
well, there was a code requirement on the offices needed a loading area.
Loading area.
Yeah. It's basically like an enlarged parking spot. That's basically what it is. And that will be behind the rear building.
I have probably seen more UPS and Amazon vehicles.
Yeah.
I can imagine that in small deliveries, there's no manufacturing taking place on site, there's no warehousing taking place on site.
Correct.
But if the longshoremen decide to have a meeting, I can imagine catering, I can imagine, people or whatever, chairs they would need, so.
So it's not on Vauxhall Road, it's behind the building?
Oh, yeah, it's behind the buildings. Yeah, yes.
The next question that I had, you mentioned that there's going to be a handicap ramp and so on, right? Are there elevators in the building, because it's a two-story building?
No, it's not.
So let's say if someone does have some form of, disability of some sort, how would they access the second floor?
Basically, it's not a requirement to have an elevator on a small building like this. And again, this is only on the front building. But typically, like I would assume, whoever runs it through the offices, whatever is needed for handicapped persons, they would just do it on the ground floor, on the main floor.
Related to handicap accessibility, I point out, the letter, needs to provide some additional grade shots on the ramp that individuals will use to go from the parking lot into the first floor of the building.
Yeah, we can provide you. I think there's still going to be like a few changes as we go along with this with the site and the rear area. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then before it's built. Okay. I'll ask the surveyor to give us some additional information.
Just so I understand, you're talking about the rise and rock.
Yeah. Yeah. I added a couple more dimensions on there, elevations on my last review. But yeah, if there's any changes or any additional on the construction drawings, it'll be addressed.
I do have another question, too. You spoke about the basement that exists in the front building
Correct.
that's going to be filled in, leaving a crawl space.
Correct.
And you spoke about the fact that water will be able to flow in and out. And I don't mean to be rude, why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you simply raise it or offer a foundation that would not allow for water flow? I wouldn't want water flowing through my office building.
That's a DEP issue.
Okay, tell me.
DEP, they will look at that and say, well, water is supposed to flow in, like come in and out. If you fill in, let's say we say, okay, well, we don't want any water on this property, so we're going to fill the entire property 2 feet. that would mean somebody else gets the water, not ours. So
And
you're
Buffalo
causing,
Road does-
yeah, you're causing issues to neighboring properties if we all decided to fill in, you know. So the water has to go somewhere. If it's not on your property, then it goes on the neighbors.
So you're anticipating there will
It
be
gets
water
higher.
flooding on the
Yeah, so
property.
so the whole concept is, okay, if any water comes into your building or on your property, you can't just, let's block the water and let the neighbor's water get higher. So all the water will just come in, and then we provide flood vents on the foundation. So it basically, so it allows all water to come in, and then and then it flows out.
So you wouldn't raise the building and camouflage that raising?
Correct. It's only on the crawl space. Water is not. I mean, we are building this first floor where the offices are is 1 foot above the 100-year flood level. Yes, that number keeps on. Lately, has been getting a little bit crazy. Yeah, a couple of years back, because of Sandy and the EPA has been adjusting these numbers.
We were just discussing that.
Yeah, so it may change in the future, but currently what's required is 1 foot above the floodplain, and that's what we are providing.
It sounds as if you are anticipating that this area in the floodplain will experience flooding. Is that so?
Well, we have to build it so that it's prepared for it.
Just like every dam has a
Yeah.
dam has a spillway. They anticipate heavy water, and they have the spillways on either side
Yeah,
of the dam.
yeah.
This is what happens.
I'm not familiar of this area flooding all the way. I mean, you look at the buildings and you don't see any evidence that there was a flood there at a time, you know, because you can tell from moisture, from the water lines, you know, like you see these white lines on the foundations. I mean, but I cannot, I mean, I haven't been around 100 years, so I can't say 100 years ago.
We have to base all of our analysis with the FEMA map.
Correct.
Although you don't observe any evidence of past flooding, I can tell you that there has been
There has been.
past flooding.
Oh, yeah.
Any further questions from the board?
Yes, in regards, will there be any changes to the driveways, the ingress and
Yeah,
egress?
currently there's only one driveway that goes in. It's next to the building on the right side, at the front of the front building. It's basically where that driveway comes in and out, or goes out, sorry. So what we are proposing to do is 2 driveways. One goes in, turns around, and then goes back out.
And is it compliant with all emergency vehicles?
Yes, and that's even more helpful. So emergency vehicles don't have to back up or turn around. They can just loop around. So it's basically like an oval shape. So that works even better.
Are you aware of the number of employees?
Maybe I'm not even sure if my client would know.
I'll put my client on the stand again,
But if you need that question, yeah.
because he's the one with the relationship with the longshoremen.
Thank you.
Just had a quick question. Quick question. Can the 7 parking spots in the rear plus the loading area? Yes. Thank you. What are those spaces adjacent to? Basically, what is that entire area below the 7 parking spaces in the loading dock?
Oh, the entire rear yard is all landscaped. Currently, there's a number of trees. This property is heavily wooded area, basically. There's a whole bunch of trees. We haven't really established what's to keep and what's to remove. We will have to go with the building department afterwards, trying to see what's the best thing to do. My client is not to. The intention is not to remove all the trees. That's what we're saying. So whatever trees are in bad shape, we'll be removing, and then all the good ones we'll just be keeping it.
But there won't be any kind of impervious surface
Oh,
in that
no.
area.
Yeah, that's all going to be landscaped.
It's all going to be landscaped.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the public? Mr. George, please call your next witness.
Got a question.
Oh, come on up, sir. I didn't. Come on up, sir.
See an artist rendering of this?
Hi, sir. Would you mind? I'm over here. Can you tell me your name?
Lloyd Middlebrook,
I'm sorry. Spell it for me.
Middlebrooks.
Okay. Sir, are you a neighbor?
I live on Maryland Court,
Maryland Court.
not in the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Sorry, any more questions?
And then I'm going to swear you in. What number on Maryland Court?
114.
Okay. Mr. Middlebrook, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give the board tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a few questions and I have a few comments. Excuse me. Anyone who says that the area is not going to be affected is incorrect. Number one, on Vauxhall Road around the school time, there's a lot of traffic. You talk about adding 30 more cars in that area. I have 2 kids that graduated from Union High School and also went to the middle school. They was walking to school. If you increase that traffic, you're also increasing the probability of a young person maybe getting hurt or being injured. You're also talking about cars with exhaustion and health effects for that area. Now, my property is in the back of where they're talking about building at. If there's a problem with water, it's going to affect my property.
Sir, I would never invalidate your feelings. I think it's important, but this is the opportunity
All right.
to cross.
Mr. Georgie, one
It's just
second.
going to affect my property. It's my property and 2 other neighbors that's there. That water is going to come in and affect our property. We already, at this time, having some movement with rodents in the area and other things because of what they're building in the area. Now, in the back parking lot, you're talking about what, lights in the area? If they place up lights in the area, my back property is where my family room is. That light is going to affect my family room, and it's probably going to be on what, 24 hours a day? Okay. Now, we pay property taxes, and my property taxes have increased. I have been in this property since the year 2000, never had a problem, and you're talking about putting more. If it's a single-family home, it's one thing. You're talking about an office building, and they can't even tell you how many employees. The architect is talking about building, and then he walks away. So when there's water affected, now we have to deal with, repercussions on how we're going to deal with the water that's coming in. And I think that it's unfair to the neighbors who bought property there, great neighborhood, and now the building that's going on, and also the affection of the kids.
Thank you, sir. We do appreciate your input. Do you have any questions for the expert, sir?
No, not at this time.
Well, thank you very much for your input. Do you have anything to add to that, sir?
Yes. What's the closest parking space to the back of the property? How many feet separate the last parking space to the back of the property?
63 feet and a half.
Okay. And what's the greatest distance between the rear of the 2-story building and the back property?
146 feet.
Do you believe that if a light was placed anywhere near the parking area, it would be shining on the back of the property or towards the parking lot?
We actually don't have lights facing the back of the property, so there will be no lights facing his property or Maryland Court. I actually designed the house on Maryland Court, by the way. So I know the area.
So you believe that this gentleman's concern about light
Yeah.
intrusion is not going to be an issue at all?
Yeah, I don't think so. Plus, it's landscaped, and like as I mentioned, the backyard is heavily treed.
What about his surface runoff concern?
Well, our flood area is only in the front area of the property. You're talking about 50 feet from the road. So the flood plain that we are talking about is only in the front section of the property, not in the back. So this is only a small area in the front of the property. This property is 340 feet long. So all we are talking about is something that's about 50 feet, 55 feet in the front.
Okay.
I have established the line, the 50 feet from the stream and from the stream. Now, as I mentioned, this stream runs under the street, and I was actually on that thing. That pipe is like 4 feet high by 6, 7 feet, or 8 feet wide. So it's a big tunnel under the road.
Does the comment made by that citizen at all affect your opinion about the highest and best use of this property?
Well, I'm not sure if there's any flood issues on that area there. I know when they built this court, like I said, I'm familiar with this. I know the builder who did this entire drainage, roads, the pipes under the road on that side, And as I mentioned, I know with the developer that did that, so I'm kind of familiar with what happened there. I'm not sure if there's any flood issues on that location. I don't believe so, and I believe they have drainage retaining ponds by the front of the property. I don't know if over time this thing was built, I think in the mid-90s, and I don't think, typically those things don't, in other words, all the rainwater from all the houses go in this pond, and typically those ponds are designed to within 100 feet, 100-year flood, you know,
Right. So is it your testimony, your opinion? Right.
yeah,
I asked you for opinion, sir.
yeah,
Upstream from your property,
yeah,
okay, the Vauxhall Branch comes down, as we said earlier,
yeah,
onto Vauxhall Road,
correct. And it goes out, yeah,
comes in with the Broadway River.
correct, it goes the other way.
I
But,
don't see anything that we're doing on your property that would cause an impact on this upstream area
correct,
that the gentleman alluded to.
yeah. Yeah, like I said, I don't believe anything happens on that side. All our issues is in the front of the property, and the stream goes away from their property, so.
Before you move on, another question that the gentleman had was regarding traffic, right? Was any traffic study done or anything like that to show the impact on an increased number of vehicles coming in and how it's going to impact traffic and so on and so forth?
We didn't do a traffic study, it wasn't required. What I would say about this building would be used in basically from morning to afternoon, 5, 6 o'clock. That's typically when they close. It accommodates, like as I mentioned, the requirement for parking is 20 cars. We are providing 27. So, I mean, I would be surprised if ever the parking is always occupied for 20 throughout the day, but let's say it is. It's going to be used only in the afternoon. Yes, it's at school time at 3 o'clock, there will be cars or people working in this office. It's not closing time where, 5, 6 o'clock when people go home. So I cannot say, that it's going to do it's going to affect the traffic on the street tremendously, but yeah, we will be providing 20 parking spaces, and these are for people that work there throughout the day. They go in the morning, go home at night at 5, 6 o'clock.
The board should note that we do not require the traffic report because the use really is not changing from what it was, which at one time, before it became abandoned, was an office, 2 office buildings. The office buildings essentially are going to remain the same. The use is not changing. Therefore, we did not require a traffic report.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And also referencing to the gentleman's on Maryland Court's concerns about lighting and seeing the rendering and trying to review the site, I don't see any sources of external lighting. Are there any external lighting on the property? And if so, can you please locate, whether on the rendering and as well as the site plan, where lighting will actually be?
The lighting is basically required for the parking areas and walking areas.
I think it's almost near the back. It's missing? No, I saw it. I saw it in the engineer's plans.
Okay. I can bring it up on the screen. Yeah. It's up on the wall. So we're showing one light. This was done by a lighting. Come on, where's this? Where's the cursor's not showing up? So basically, like we have one on the side of the building. Basically, these spots. I don't know. The cursor doesn't appear. So basically, we will have one lighting on the side of the building here, and that basically lights up the parking area here. We have one in the back of the building, or in between these two buildings, that lights up this parking area in between and the walkways. We have an additional light on the side of the building, and again, this is an L shape, so it's not going to affect the neighbors at all. And then there's an additional light on the side of the building that covers this area here. So there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights that we are proposing. And these are wall-mounted. Typically, we call them wall packs. They kind of face down.
And the lighting near the rear of the property, is it pointing towards the 7 parking spots, or
No,
where exactly is the location?
Oh, yeah, and there's another parking spot by the, there's another light on the parking. So by the loading spot here, there's a light here that lights this parking back here. And that's a wall-mounted.
So, Mr. Chairman, for the record, are you confident, and will you and your team agree that the light will not spill over to Maryland Court to any residential areas?
Correct. I certify it.
Going back just to your last sentence for my question, that last light, did you just say it's wall mount?
The last one is on a pole.
It's on a pole.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that basically faces straight down. It doesn't light to the sides. Those lights are generally like light to go straight down.
And how high is the pole?
Let me see what he. It's one of these lights, as you can see, and the height is at 7.5 feet. It's located 7.5 feet up high.
Will they be on all night, or do they go off at a certain time?
We can. It can be timed so that it shuts off at night. Yeah, there's no reason. A lot of towns or some areas, they want the lights on only because to prevent, like crime or just darkness,
Well, I think to then follow up with that thought, will there be any kind of security cameras on the property as well?
Oh, yes.
Where?
I don't have a plan right now, but we will address that with the tenant. Typically, we'll do it in the front, on the sides, by the entrances.
Top secret.
What company did you retain to install the security cameras?
Oh, we don't have anybody yet. Just we don't have construction drawings yet. We're not
What type
prepared
of
yet.
security plan is in place?
What was that?
What type of a security plan is in place?
Currently?
Yes.
Oh, currently, is there anything there?
No.
I don't think it never had any.
All right, so if there is a flood, what plans are in place to alleviate the flood? Okay, you can call your next witness.
Sure. We do have the engineer here.
Okay, call your next witness, please.
Thank you. All right. Any more questions from the, right, yeah, I saw a hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, is there?
There's questions.
Good evening, sir. Please identify yourself for the record, please.
Ronnie McDowell, live at 117 Maryland Court.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name, sir.
Ronnie McDowell,
And would you please spell McDowell?
McDowell.
And, I'm sorry, what number on Maryland Court?
117.
Okay, and would you raise your right hand, sir? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give the board tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess
Sir, you have to talk into the mic.
Is
Grab-
that all landscape, you said?
Yeah.
And in the upper, I guess the last little bit of land there, that's the trash or?
The last thing there is a trash compactor. It's fenced in.
And that last line on the left,
That's the property line, yes.
and I don't know if you can answer this question, but I was with my neighbor, looked over the fence, and there are about 2 dozen 55-gallon drums. They're, I can't tell whether they're empty or full, but there's about 2 dozen 55-gallon drums. Look like they're rusted, so I don't know if you guys are even aware of that. You are? They're actually full of gravel. Gravel?
Yeah, we just ordered that on the property before. We kept a whole bunch of private ones.
Okay, so there won't be any kind of, I guess, DEP?
No, we did a full phase one.
Mr. Georgie, you can ask your.
Yeah, you can ask
can't
my
have
question, yeah.
People talking,
Yeah.
we have to put on the record who's
Right,
talking to
Mr.
who here.
Silva, please approach the dais, be sworn in.
And that's all I need.
Thank you, sir.
Well, come on, Mr. Silva. So, raise your right hand and be sworn in for the record.
Bruno Silva?
Mr. Silva, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to speak to the,
You are the principal of the Silva Associates, the applicant, correct?
yes,
Okay, and you were asked by one of the members of the audience to identify the contents of some 24 55-gallon drums that are on the property, correct?
yes,
And you provided an answer, yes?
yes.
Could you repeat the answer for the record as to what's in the 55-gallon drums?
Sure. So previously, before we took over the property, we did a whole phase one on the property to see if oil tanks, we removed some oil tanks from the property. And then we had them check the drums and everything. They're literally filled with garbage, gravel, old brick, and wood that they used to use for a stove that they had in the garage.
Oh, if given the opportunity to develop the site, will you remove those drums?
Yes,
Okay. If given the opportunity, will you improve the site?
yes,
Okay. If given the opportunity, will you make the site look almost similar to what's in the picture that's at the bottom of the architectural plans?
yes.
Okay. Do you have any experience with real estate before? Is this your first project?
No, this is not our first project.
Could you give the board the benefit of your background in real estate?
Sure. So this, we've been in business since 2011. We've done numerous real estate deals, mostly residential. This is actually our first commercial, but we are general contractors, and we actually just finished a project over on Vauxhall Road, which is the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay, so
I'm pretty sure you guys are all familiar. They were in front of your board.
So you worked in Union before?
Yes.
Okay. Do you personally believe this is the highest and best use for this property?
Yes. So I originally bought the property to create my office and garage with shop in the back. But after a couple of meetings with the zoning officer and Phil, we thought it would be a harder variance to get. So I worked something out with the ILA, and I was able to get them to commit for us to build their corporate office there.
Could you tell the board what the ILA is?
Sure, it's an international longshoreman. They have about 1,700 members. Currently working in their office in Newark, they have about 7 full-time employees.
Okay. And there's a meeting room for the ILA, correct?
Yes, there's a small conference room which they have a meeting usually every quarter. But their meetings are usually at Costa del Sol, so that will be like a fillover for their meetings that they currently host there.
And the longshoremen are known to take delivery of product, correct?
Yes, usually office supplies, some,
But at the port, they take delivery of products.
yes, they,
But you don't anticipate them taking delivery of products here?
absolutely not.
Okay. All right. And the type of business you have, the construction business you have, would have required big articulated vehicles and backhoes and construction material, correct?
Yes,
And you didn't pursue that opportunity at this site. Instead, you pursued an opportunity to build an office building for the longshoremen, correct?
correct.
Okay. And how long do you think construction will take?
Construction will probably take anywhere from 12 to 18 months.
Okay. And would you put barriers around it to ensure that no debris hits any neighboring property, including the street, Vauxhall, and including these gentlemen's property in the back?
Yes, we are super far away from their property in the back.
Okay. And do you have, I see some landscaping there. I'm not much of an arborist, but they.
Excuse me, sir? I don't think we've seen that. Could we mark that as Exhibit A1? And could you just describe for me what that is, a depiction of?
So it's kind of like a look from the street
Okay.
So you can see the front building there and then the building in the back.
From Vauxhall.
With the conference from Vauxhall, looking into the property.
Thank you.
Do you have a preferred landscape company, or do you do your own landscaping?
We usually do our own landscaping.
Okay, and you're not opposed to adding additional landscaping in the back to make sure that there's no surface runoff of mud and dirt and things like that?
No.
Okay.
And we
Is that a
also,
condition?
and also during construction, we have to put a plan together for the soil commission of the county.
And if approved, will you work around the hours that are approved by the township union for construction?
Yes.
You won't work outside those hours?
No.
Okay, all right. I have no further questions for my client.
Question from the board.
Can I just say one more thing? In reference to the lighting plan for the neighbor was on our lighting plan up on top, there's a shaded area with some lighting. So that's pretty much what the lighting runoff of the lights will be. So you can see towards the left, the back of the property, there's practically none.
You're saying the blue shaded area will not?
No, you see the black that I'm zooming in now?
Yes.
See all the whited shaded area is what you're actually going to get from the lighting. You can see the pole in the back, and you see towards right after the garbage cans, it becomes nothing.
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Silva?
Yes, I do. Mr. McDowell referenced a fence. Will you be replacing the fence that's currently there?
I'm not sure whose fence that is. I actually believe that might be a fence from their side. So our thought is to plant some trees or some big green giants or something like that back there to block their view and give them some privacy.
A2, because we don't have this previously supplied, we don't think.
Okay.
Okay, so, and how would you describe A2?
We're just going to say it's a rendering.
Artist rendering.
This is up here, the lighting.
Well, this is on the lighting plan.
I'm sorry?
This is on the lighting plan.
Oh, okay, and you've already supplied that to the board?
Yes, the board
Okay.
has copies.
My apologies, thank you.
No worries.
Missing from this plan for some reason.
No.
That sheet's missing.
Okay,
I saw it today in the engineer's office, but it's missing here.
It's missing for our plans. We just forgot to print it to bring it here.
okay, but it's been supplied?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Will you
Sure.
be able to identify who the fencing belongs to and replace it if necessary?
Our surveyor just noted it as a fence. It's been there for forever. We can figure that out and see whose it is. If it is ours, we're not opposed to change it out or like I said, leave it up there and we'll just plant some greens alongside of it to give them a maximum privacy.
Who else's would it be?
Excuse me?
Who else's could it be then?
It could be theirs.
The surveyor shows on the drawings that the fence is on their side, on the neighbor's property. It's set 0.5 feet, so it's 6 inches over to the property line. So that fence is the neighbor's.
Or the development, whoever's it was.
If it's a requirement of the board to put a landscape perimeter and a PVC fence, would you be opposed to that in the rear of the property?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
But obviously on our side. I wouldn't touch their fence.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Yes, there's a member from, I'm sorry.
I know.
Oh, do you want to see? They want to see it. They just want to see the
Questions from
rendering.
the public?
Yes.
What's there now?
I can email it.
All right, do we have any more questions? All right, do we have any more questions from the audience?
Oh, what are your the office hours going to be? Do you know?
Their office hours, they're usually there only in the morning till about 3, 4 o'clock. That's the way they operate hours now in Newark. So they'd be doing the same amount of hours up here.
Come on up. Thank you, sir. No, got to go in the front of the mic, sir. Will you identify yourself again for the record, please?
Lloyd Middlebrooks, and I live on Maryland Court.
Thank you, sir.
During the construction, if there's some changes in construction, will we at Maryland Court be notified?
Sir?
No. Once this is approved,
I'm just saying, if it's approved,
Mhm.
and then down the line, you decide, hey, you know what, we need to do A, B, and C, we need to make changes to A, B, and C.
we would need to come before the board, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. will the
Well, we're
board
going to take
notify
care
us?
of that, sir. We're going to discuss that.
know that we have had some discussion in the past, and nothing was done.
All right, Mr. George, your next witness?
I just,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
want to, yeah,
Another
just,
another question.
just to follow up on the questions about the use of the property itself. If I could recall so right now, there are 7 full-time staff working from an office in Newark. Is this office going to be a relocation from their Newark offices to here, or is this a supplementary office as an expansion of their current Newark office?
No, they will be relocating.
It will be a relocation, and it is indeed 7 full-time employees?
Yes. And that includes the president, vice president. It's all the head of the office. They're usually between the office and the port.
And in their roles, of the 7 full-time employees, I assume that they would be utilizing this building every weekday from office, regular office hours. Is that correct?
Yes.
With the fact that there are 2 buildings, another thing that I'm interested in is 7 people, 2 buildings. How many other people would be entering the property, and for what kind of purpose?
So the front building is set to be the credit union. That's part of the union as well. So there would be 2 employees that are there that take care of the credit union.
And is that part of the 7 full-time employees
Yes.
that you stated? Okay. So the front is the credit union. The newer building will be for remaining staff. Are there any occasions in which more than the 7 typical full-time staff members would be utilizing that property?
There could be future. This is an office building. It's not limited to having just 7 staff members there. They are buying it for their own use, but like I said, they can like rent the second floor on the front building and have a small office there of anything really.
So
The offices are small, so they're very limited to the amount of people they could hold.
I think where I'm getting with my line of questioning is that on a very consistent day-to-day basis, you would probably only see 7 people commute typically to that property and out of that property day by day by day.
Yes, and that's hence why we actually did the parking spaces in the back. That would be for them, and then the parking spaces up front would be for members that come in for questions or things like that.
And for those members that would come in for any questions, just out of curiosity from the usage of the Newark office, how many would you anticipate, or have they received on kind of a daily or a weekly basis?
I can't answer that for sure. All I can tell you there's their office parking spaces there are about 10, and they're never full.
10 spaces over there, but they're never full. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Any other questions from the board? No? From the public?
The credit union portion, that was the first time I heard that.
Yeah, it's part of the ILA. They have their own credit union.
And will that be open just only during the office hours?
Yes, same thing.
Just
Always during business hours.
Drive up all night? kind of-
Yes, yeah, no.
I know, credit unions.
Any other questions? Okay,
I'd like to call my next
thank you,
witness.
Mr. Sullivan. Yes,
Thank you.
call your-
Civil engineer Baig.
Sir, would you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Mirza Baig. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of New Jersey.
Could you please spell your name for me?
Mirza Baig.
Thank you. Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Baig, could you give the board the benefit of your educational background?
I had all my education done back in India. I'm from India. I did my bachelor's over there and my master's over there. And then I came over here in 2001. And in 2008, I got my professional license after appearing for the licensing exam from the NCEES. And then since then, I have been practicing my profession here.
Okay. consistently from the time you were licensed to now?
Yes,
Okay. Have you been in similar projects as the one that's before the board today?
yes.
Okay. And have you given expert testimony on any previous occasions, to any board or court or tribunal regarding engineering qualifications?
Yes, I have appeared before the board in Belleville earlier, and once, I'm not really sure, it was like almost 15 years ago, whether it was Union or Hillside, one of these two, I was there also during around 2014 time, and then recently, most recently in Secaucus.
Okay. Are you required to take continuing education?
Yes, I do.
Do you take continuing education?
Yes, it's part of my the requirement of my renewal, license.
Members of the board, I'd like to move Mr. Begg as a expert in civil engineering.
Before I make a decision on that, Mr. George, would you please ask him what he studied in college?
Sure. What was your undergraduate studies?
Bachelor of Civil Engineering, and then Master of Civil Engineering.
Okay, thank you. So ordered.
Excellent. Okay. So we have a depiction of the retention basin.
Yes.
Basin up on the screen.
Yes.
And because it was the subject of some conversation, I'd like to just dovetail into that and have you explain the green roof and the retention basis. And with your permission, I didn't mark these, but we prepared a bit of a flow chart to show how the green roof works and filters down through the.
Are you going to pass that out to the board members?
Oh, no.
Okay, we'll mark that into. And we'll leave a couple for us.
Okay, so he only gave me five copies, one of which he kept to explain it, but.
All right, give us one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
All right.
Could you explain to the board the green
Yeah.
roof
Yes.
and the retention basin?
Okay.
How it's good for this site?
Yes, so basically a green roof is one of the 3 or 4 type of retention systems we use typically. Green roof and blue roofs, they are basically done on properties which really don't have, which are built wall to wall, and there's no other area, rear yard or front yard where you can have a basin or a dry well to retain the stormwater. So basically it works in the principle that during rain it holds up water up to 1 inch of it has capacity to hold 1 inch of water during rain, and then it slowly drains out afterwards within a 72-hour period. That's what the DEP NJDEP ordinance calls for. So these are connected back into the roof leaders, and they pass out onto the to the normal way, in smaller storms. So that's the way it works, all right? And we have this system set up on one of the buildings you see over there. And so part of the impervious layer, because of the impervious layer, we are planning for the parking lot area. That has increased the overall impervious layer compared to the existing one. Now, so that means that much of more runoff, street runoff, rain runoff is going to be falling down onto the property, coming onto the property, which we have to deal with. As per the DEP ordinance, we have to treat our own runoff, post-development runoff. So part of the strategy we have applied over here is to capture that runoff in terms for a green roof, in a green roof. And that's not all because the development is much more than the green roof can offer. So we have an additional storage area, underground storage area, located in the parking lot over there, the green ones.
Would you say it's the green box in the middle?
Yes,
of the area?
that's correct.
And could you describe what that is to the board?
Yeah, basically it's just like a holding tank. It's an underground storage tank. It could be of concrete. It could be just brick wall, underground. It's just 5 feet deep. And it will have a concrete roof, a reinforced concrete roof, so the movement of traffic won't be affected, the parking, etc., won't be affected. Now, underneath the water from the green roof and as well as all other drains are let into that tank. It's like a holding tank. It's designed for a 100-year flood event. And once that water is stored, it'll let off. There's another small tank right next to it. It's called a control structure. That's also designed to hold it. So between these two, the water passes in onto the, gets into the tank first, and then, yeah. Okay.
They can't see the other tank.
Okay. It's this little box next to it. That's the control structure. Yeah. Oh, touchscreen, sorry. Okay, so that little box over there, that's the control structure. So the water first comes into this holding tank, underground tank. It gets stored there, and once it reaches a certain level, it passes on to the control structure, and then control structure also holds it for a little time. It's designed to hold, the entire system is designed to hold for 72 hours, as per the ordinance. And from there, it's let on to the public sewer across, which is running along the Vauxhall Road.
Okay. Is there a sump pump associated with this, or is it gravity fed?
It's all gravity fed.
Could you explain that to the board?
Yeah, if the board can turn over the papers I supplied.
Show
Yeah.
them what you want to look at.
Yeah.
Please show the board the picture you want to look at.
Yeah, this one.
Second page.
So you can see it's all gravity fed, so the water comes in from here, it gets stored here, and when it reaches certain level, it's let out here by gravity into the control structure, and then from the control structure out into this public sewer. So it's all gravity fed, no pumps, no electricity involved.
In your opinion, as a civil engineer, and you've already been qualified as an expert, is this system capable of handling the water and rain that'll be existing on the site?
Absolutely. We did analysis for a 2-year flood event, a 10-year flood event, and a 100-year flood event. All the 3 criteria we covered currently listed by the NJDEP ordinance. And this is designed for the maximum flood event.
And you mentioned to the board, it's able to handle 1 inch of water, is that correct?
1 inch of water, the green roof is going to handle.
Okay.
Okay. Anything beyond that is going to spill over onto the parking lot, and there are numerous drains, and I designed the drainage system so that all that drains, they lead into the control structure, into the underground tank. And so whatever rain falls above and beyond the 1 inch will find its way into the underground tank. And so we handle our own runoff in a storm event. And after that, it'll be passed onto the public sewer after 72 hours.
Okay. I know it was a concern of the township engineer that the walls associated with the building, he's concerned about whether or not it'll sustain the weight of a green room. Is that something that you could touch upon?
Yes.
You be a structural engineer, but I believe
Correct.
you probably have that education as well.
Correct. So basically, as per the design concept, ACE and other building codes, we have both the dead load and the live load. In addition, there's also weather load, if you want to say. So we have in the northeast and in the north area, we have snow load. That is taken as 30 pounds per square feet. Okay, that load during a rain event, that load will be substituted for the rain. So we already have a provision on normal design without even asking for any without any having any kind of blue roof or green roof imposed on the roof. We already have a provision of 30 pounds per square feet additional loading on a normal roof. That's for any roof we have, even for residential purposes. Okay, so now we are talking about the additional 20 square feet, which the engineer has asked for. Well, that will be taken care of during the design phase. This is not the actual structural design phase. So since there's currently, if you have been to the building, to the site, there's no roof. It's just the walls. We have the foundation walls, concrete block walls standing there, only one level, up to just the first floor level. So when the design is approved, so the designer will design it for the second roof and the third, for the first roof and the second roof, and also he'll put in 20 square feet additional loading for the green roof.
Okay. Do you believe that this design, this proposed building is consistent with the Township Union zoning and planning laws?
Yes, it's consistent with the NJDEP and the state NJDEP requirement.
Do you believe constructing the building and construction of the retention basin will have any negative impact on the site or the surrounding neighbors?
No, because actually we'll be taking care of our own flood waters. So I don't see any negative impact on that unless the tank doesn't work or, is filled up. For that, we have annual maintenance or 6-month maintenance. We have already laid that out in our design brief. So in our report, that's there. So apart from that, I don't see any adverse impact.
Okay. I have no further questions for this expert.
Okay, questions from the board?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. You've talked about the capacity of that retention basin being able to handle a 100-year flood event. I'm just curious, what's the capacity of that container by volume? How much water can it hold?
Okay. I have that in the report.
The detention basin is 3,694 cubic feet, is that correct? Or 27,634 gallons?
27,000, that's correct.
Any other questions from the board?
How tall is the structure that's going to go over the roof?
Oh, it's gonna be, that's a good question. Typically, the green roof has many layers. So each layer is, there's one drainage layer that's typically about 3 to 4 inches. And then you have another up to 5 inches of the vegetative, the topsoil for that, the soil layer. And then you have the vegetation itself, it's almost 6 inches. So if you discount the vegetation, because you'll be trimming it, during maintenance, so the actual solid thing will be 12 to 14 inches high.
So, unfortunately, I'm asking questions out of unfamiliarity with the concept. It is actually planted.
It will be planted, yes.
So
It
you
will be like a
spoke
planter.
You spoke of layers. The
Huh?
first layer would it be a gravel first? Or
Okay, this,
If you don't mind, because I know you were, Mr. Georgie, you were clear to say we'd learn a lot, and I'd be anxious to learn.
Okay. We have, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. We have a gravel layer of about 3 inches.
Okay.
And then above that, we have a permeable drainage layer, which is basically like sand, okay? That's another 3 inches. So we have, how much, 3 plus, almost 6 inches. And then we have what we call as growing medium. That's typically, as per the code, it has to be less than 6 inches. We are providing 5 inches of that. So that's all there is.
And does that continue to grow?
I'm sorry?
Does that continue to grow then?
Yeah, it's a continuous, it's like your garden plant, the one you put in a planter.
Yeah.
So you have to trim it, you have to maintain it all the time.
So if someone goes onto that green roof and cuts the grass?
Yeah, they have to. No, these are in small planters, placed next to it, so it's easy. And we have provided access, all around, so that a maintenance person can actually go there and trim it.
I see. Thank you for the information.
Okay.
And that load that obviously Mr. Hatterer and many of us are concerned about relative to the structure, you had just testified a few minutes ago that the structure could handle that.
It should, no, right now we don't have any structure, but as and when we design it, the designer designs it, it will be taken care of. So he'll be putting in, option for that additional 20 square feet of load.
I'm saying, I think as a board member, the fact that there is no design nor no application yet of that in mathematics mathematical terms makes me uncomfortable.
Mr. Chairman, a question through you to Mr. Hatterer. Is that typically the purview of the building department to pass judgment on those structural plans, or is that the purview of this board? I can still hear you. The question that was asked by Mrs. Perkins regarding the structural load for the green roof. The engineers testified that those structural plans have not been developed yet, but is that something that is the purview of this board or the purview of the building department to pass judgment on the fitness of the design? Correct. So,
If you may permit me, that green roof maintenance is right there in the first chapter of the report. Underneath, you'll find it. It's there.
Can you repeat that? I
And
couldn't hear you.
also, I'm sorry?
Could you repeat that, sir? It's
Okay.
where, it's, the maintenance for the green roof is in our, is it here?
Is in the report, which
In the
in my report. Yeah, it's there. If you see, it's already listed there. But additionally, we also already provided the additional maintenance. We removed that and put it in a different, in the maintenance package, which covers both the maintenance of the underground tank as well as the roof. So.
You might have written it in one section, but I did not see it in the maintenance plan.
Give me a second, sir.
Mr. Georgie, do you have any other witnesses?
I think he's still answering the engineer's question.
Oh, okay.
I think the engineer asked him about the maintenance plan.
Oh.
And I don't know if someone goes up there to lawnmower, I really don't know.
You know,
Oh, there you go.
The Mr. Silva just said that he has submitted that to your office about 7 days ago.
any other questions from the board? Questions from the public? Okay. Mr. Georgie, would you like to present your summations, please?
Yes. We've
Thank
heard
you.
from Mr. Silva, who is desirous of building something on this site. And I understand John Dutton might not be a fan of progress, but I think every town should be a fan of progress. And I drove by the site today because I was asked to pitch in for Attorney Serrano, and what I saw was nothing short of horrific. So something has to be done. So if something has to be done, that ranges anywhere from a park, which I'm sure everyone would like to see a park, but that's not going to happen, to a high-density retail with a lot of cars in and out. Or Mr. Silver could plant his construction company there, and he's going to have construction vehicles, dump trucks, trailers, backhoes, which I'm sure the neighbors would not want to see. We already know the tenant will be the International Longshoremen's Association. We already know they're going to have an ATM there. We already know the hours of operation. Something has to be done, and quite frankly, between the architect's testimony and the engineer's testimony, this would appear to be the highest and best use. And trust me, I'm familiar with retention bases and green walls. He's not spending the wrong kind of money on this project. He's spending the right kind of money on this project. It's going to be a complete beautification of the site. You're familiar with the church he did. I'm not. I wish I saw the church he did because I'm told he does beautiful work.
Mr. Georgie, your witness is approaching.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
I think the engineer asked for, if I'm understanding, the engineer said something was supposed to be submitted. They allege
All
it
right.
was emailed 7 days ago.
All right, Mr.
and
Georgie, you have to get control of your witnesses, please.
Okay.
You have, I mean, really.
If we could open up the hearing to allow the engineer to make a comment.
This appears to be revised stormwater maintenance. It's just April 10th.
All right. Mr. Georgie, you were in,
You saying that if I go through this plan, I'll see how you will go about maintaining.
That's correct. That's correct.
okay. Any more questions? Sir, please go sit down, please. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Continue your summations, Mr. Georgie?
I usually judge the application and how it's going by how many residents turn out. And I heard the concern of the residents, and one of them was noise, one of them was a possible greenscape, and one of them was possible light. And I think between the experts and my client, we have somewhat satisfied those concerns because the closest light is 135 feet away from the neighboring property. And my client has already testified that if he's required by the board to replace the PVC fence, he will do it on his side of the and still put greenscaping. So I do believe that we've established a prima facie case that the board has enough to determine that the granting of the variances will create a hardship for my client, but they're consistent and they won't negatively impact on the township, the area, or the planning and zoning boards of the Township of Union. And I would truly hope that you would approve this project on behalf of my client.
Thank you, Mr. Georgie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your very sound representation for your client, and we thank the witnesses that you called. I am frankly concerned that I'm not confident that if we take a vote today, you're going to get the votes that you need. So this is what I'm going to suggest to you, sir. I'm going to suggest that we table this until maybe the May or the June meeting, and I think that will give you time to reach out to Mr. Hatterer and to Ms. Fitzpatrick to give them a revised plan to answer the questions that haven't been answered yet, and to be able to respond to the residents who I think made very sound points during their presentation. I would rather do that than take a vote, and the vote, you don't get the votes. I think that the better alternative is to table this so you and Mr. Hatterer and Ms. Fitzpatrick have time to present a revised plan that we actually have answers to the questions. What do you think, sir?
Can I just say, oh my goodness, in order so that he doesn't have to renotice, can we designate when this is going to be carried to the next meeting, to the May meeting? I don't know the date.
Well, I think that we can make that determination when
Well, but this way, the public is aware of when it's scheduled, so he doesn't have to
Yeah.
do his notice again. There's a full calendar for it? Oh,
Say that again, I'm getting my calendar, my apologies.
May 25th.
May 25th.
but is there room on the agenda for this on May 20, in May?
Be the first item.
Yeah, first item, okay.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is table it for now till May 25th, see how much progress you and your client can make with our engineering department.
Could I just ask what has been delivered, or you're just seeing this document today? Is that the one that you're concerned about?
There were remarks made on the record just before about when we complete the design, when the design is done.
Okay.
I need to know, I need to see what it is and really understand it better.
I think you're almost there.
Okay.
I think you're almost there. I think we just need a little more fine tuning of it, sir.
I'm going to use the oval approach and walk down the hill, try to
Yeah.
get them all.
And the,
And I
um,
hope
Fine.
the position